Delivering Miracles is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families like yours and mine. Download the free network app on any Apple and Android devices and listen to your favorite episodes on the go. Hey, have you checked out my brand new book, Pregnancy Brain, yet? It's all about the mind-body approach to stress management during a high-risk pregnancy specifically. It has stories from my very high-risk pregnancy, tons of client stories, and so much research on the impact of stress on pregnancy and pregnancy complications and how you can have a healthy pregnancy. I would love for you to check it out at pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. Today's episode is a rebroadcast of one of the most popular Delivering Miracles episodes that has aired so far. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. Before we get started, I wanted to share something really exciting. For the first time ever, there's finally a book specifically for women with high-risk pregnancies and how to manage your stress so you can have a healthy pregnancy even if you've got complications. It's called Pregnancy Brain, and I'm really excited to share it with you. To learn more about the book, head over to pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. I can't wait for you to check it out. I was talking to a friend the other day who is going through fertility treatment right now. And she's very, very early in the treatment in that she doesn't even know if she needs it, but she's in the process of figuring out if she needs it. And part of that involves doing some blood work for herself and her partner to find out what's going on for both of them. And I was talking to her the other day and I was just asking her, so did you get your blood work back? How did it go? And she told me, yeah, I haven't really done it yet. Now, mind you, she's somebody who I know really wants a baby. She really, really wants to have a child. And this is something that's been very important to her for years. I know her very well. It's really incredibly high on their priority list to have a child. So I thought it was very interesting. I said, well, why haven't you done it yet? Is everything okay? I thought maybe, things come up, life happens. And things get put on hold. And she told me, she kind of had this sheepish look on her face. And she went, I'm avoiding it. I don't want to do it. How many times have you done something like that? Right? I'm sitting here raising my hand because I've done it. I've done it a lot. When you don't want to do something, you avoid it. You find all kinds of reasons not to do it. I'll tell you, we all have our ways of doing it, right? I'll tell you, for me, it's cleaning. If I don't want to do something, if I'm avoiding doing something, I will find something to clean. Like in that moment, the southwest corner of my bathroom must be spotless, and that becomes my priority. We all do it. We all do it. We avoid things. And when it comes to our health, we do it a lot. Making a doctor's appointment, calling your doctor back when they leave you a message, doing some blood work or going in for an ultrasound, making a decision about anything along the spectrum of building your family, taking medications, things like that. We avoid it. We avoid it for good reason. But the problem is avoiding doing the thing you need to do, whether it's calling somebody back, making an appointment, making a decision, whatever it is, avoiding doing the thing you need to do only hurts you. Not just emotionally, it hurts you physically. It hurts your health. It does not help. But taking small, proactive steps can beat the overwhelm and end avoidance and help you get to the goal that you want faster. It sounds trite, right? We all know we shouldn't avoid it. It's obvious. I need to call my doctor back. I need to make that appointment. I need to refill that medication. We all know it. So why do we do it all the time? Well, that's the big part of understanding how to beat avoidance is to understand why we avoid in the first place. There's so many different reasons why. I'll go over the most common 4. Number 1 is we're afraid of what could happen and we're anxious about the unknown. The unknown is scary. Our brains know that. Our brains neurologically, biologically are designed to avoid the unknown. It was a protective mechanism back in the caveman days. It was there to keep us alert and to keep us safe. And while we'd like to believe that we are far more evolved than our Neanderthal ancestors, in some ways we're not that different. And one of those ways is our brain keeps us protected from the unknown. Because if we don't know it, then it could be scary. It could be life-threatening. So why bother? Why go there? Now, while we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing after us anymore to threaten our safety, there's plenty of other things. And that safety doesn't have to be physical safety. It can be emotional safety. Many times it's emotional safety, right? Your whole world could come crashing down if you find out from the blood work that you're avoiding that you can't have children or you can't carry a pregnancy. Your whole world could end, could feel like your entire world crumbles if you make that doctor's appointment and you find out that there's no heartbeat, just like last time. Your whole world could end if you make a decision about taking a medication or about terminating a pregnancy. You don't know what's going to happen on the other side of that. So you don't do it, right? It's your brain's way of protecting you. If you imagine you're in this dark tunnel and your goal is to get to the light, but since you don't know what's on the other side of that tunnel, you don't know what's in the light, it seems like it should be better, but you don't know that. Your brain actually keeps you in the dark, believing that it's safer here, right? So part of the avoidance is about maintaining safety. Another reason why we avoid is because we know, either consciously or unconsciously, that we don't have the tools to cope with what's on the other side. I can't tell you how often I have women who tell me that they're avoiding going to the ultrasound because they're worried there's no heartbeat. Or I've talked to so many women who've experienced loss who said they didn't want to hear it because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what they would be able to do on the other side. Now, part of it is a grief like that, a loss like that. It is life-shattering, but it feels far more overwhelming when you don't know if you can handle it, which is a whole other conversation that we can be having and that we will have. But if you don't have the tools to cope with it, and you know that, if you don't have the tools to cope with what if going to the doctor's appointment means they tell you have to go on hospital bed rest, or you have to be on bed rest at home, or that you're going to need surgery, or you're going to need to take time off of work. If you don't have the plan, the strategy, the tools in place to be able to handle that, and you know that, you're not going to take that step. And it makes sense. It's a very calculated move. It's smart. If you don't have the resources to do something, why would you do it? Right? I'm sharing this with you because I want you to first understand why we avoid things. And I know many of you are beating yourself up for avoiding. I know I have to make that dentist appointment. I have to go see my OBGYN for my prenatal appointment, whatever that is. I have to refill my medication, but I don't want to. And then we beat ourselves up for it because we know we have to do it. We know it's important. We know we might be hurting ourselves by not doing it. And that judgment, it just makes things worse, right? So that's why I'm explaining to you and why we're talking about this now, because I want you to understand that there's a reason for it. We don't do things just for the sake of doing things. Our brain does not do that. Anything that happens in our mind, avoidance included, there is a reason. There is a protective or positive or some kind of productive reason. When you see it that way, you remove the judgment. It's a lot easier to do something about it, right? Because you know you have to stop avoiding. This podcast would be 2 seconds long. Stop avoiding. The end. But you know that already. So let's find another way around it. Okay. So we understand that avoidance is a safety measure by your brain. Avoidance is also a way of helping you be prepared by recognizing when you're unprepared. If you don't have the tools to cope with something that you think could happen, you're not going to take the step. Are you going to climb the roof if you don't have a sturdy ladder? Of course not. That's exactly what your brain's doing. It is another safety thing, but it's just another version of it. If you don't feel prepared, you don't do it. Same thing that's happening here. You feel like you don't have the tools to cope. I had a client who this would come up for her a lot. When I first started working with her, her anxiety was tremendously high, and she's not an anxious person usually, which ends up happening actually for most of my clients. They're not typically anxious women. I have worked with some who have had anxiety in the past. This one in particular, and most of them that I work with, pregnancy, especially high-risk pregnancy, creates anxiety, and in a way and at a level that they've never experienced before. So they don't know what to do with it. Naturally, if you've never had to deal with something before, what are you going to do about it? And she is one who, I don't know her physician, but her doctor made her very anxious. I don't know what happened exactly in the rooms, but when I would speak with her, she would tell me that she would leave her appointment very anxious all the time. And so she started avoiding some of the optional appointments. And look, they're optional for a reason, right? If you really needed to go to do a particular test, or if you really needed a particular ultrasound, your doctor would tell you. But in her case, she was avoiding them, not because of choice, saying, oh, okay, here are all the reasons why I don't need to go to this particular ultrasound, or I don't want this blood work result. It wasn't that. She was avoiding it in that it felt like a compulsive act to say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to know what she has to say. I don't want to go. And so much of that was tied to her not having the tools to know how to deal with her anxiety in the room. She had been working with a therapist prior to seeing me. She was very unhappy with her experience. So she came and found me by a referral from her other doctor. And through our work, I gave her the tools that she needed, and she no longer avoided things. And you know how I know and how she knew? Because the choices she was making were conscious decisions. And you know what that feels like. You know what that feels like. It's the difference between, somebody calling you like your in-laws or your mother or this neighbor that annoys you. And you know you need to pick up the phone because you need to have this conversation, but you just find something else to fill up your time because you don't want to have it right now. And you convince yourself it's a reasonable thing, but you're avoiding it. You're avoiding picking up that phone versus making a conscious choice to say, I don't want to have this conversation right now, and then turn your phone off. You know what that feels like. It feels different, right? It feels different in your body. It feels different in your head. You don't really ruminate over it when it's a choice, but when you're avoiding it, it sits in the back of your head and it chirps at you, right? So there are two reasons why we avoid. We're afraid of what could happen. We're anxious about the unknown. And number two is we don't have the tools to cope with the unknown, so we don't take that step to do it, right? If you don't know how to have that hard conversation, you're not going to have it. You're going to find ways to avoid it. Number three is you're imagining the worst case scenarios, right? So you don't know what's going to happen, right? That's one scenario. The other is you filled the future with your own stories of what could happen. Maybe some of them are based in reality. When you're going through infertility, a high-risk pregnancy, when your baby's in the NICU, really, really challenging, hard things happen, right? So imagining not having a heartbeat when you have witnessed that in previous pregnancies before, that's not that out of the norm. That's not that far out of reality for you. But you've now filled the future with all the worst case scenarios. And if you imagine that anything you do going forward, calling your doctor back, going to the appointment, filling your prescription, doing the surgery, whatever it is going to result in something bad, of course you're not going to do it. It's very logical. It makes sense that you're avoiding it then. See what I'm saying here? You see where I'm going with this? I'm trying to help you understand that avoidance is not something you need to beat yourself up for. It's something that's happening and there's a good reason for it. Okay? And the fourth is you don't think it's important. This is not one that we talk about a lot, but we avoid things that we don't think are important. It's so simple. It's so simple and so straightforward to say it that way. It kind of is like, well, duh, how's that anything profound? It's not. It's actually really that simple. That there's a quote, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, it's not that we don't have time. It's not a priority to us. I totally butcher that. That's not actually exactly how it goes, but that's the gist of it, which is We all have the same amount of time. We all have similar types and amounts of decisions to make every day, depending on our circumstances, right? And if we choose not to make an appointment, it's possible that it's not a priority, it's not of value, it's not important to you. And that's hard to accept, especially when it comes to your health, because shouldn't everything be important? That's kind of the message that we get. Every appointment should be important. Every medication should be important. Every decision should be important. Every call back to the doctor should be important. I'll tell you, I had a doctor, a specialist that I was seeing long ago, years ago, even before my pregnancy. And it's a value of mine still to this day that I remain in very close communication with my medical team for whatever it is that I'm seeing them for. And that means if I get an email from them, I reply back quickly. And I prioritize that. If I see an email come through from my doctors, that will be one of the first things. I will not let a whole day go by. If I get a phone call from them, I will call them back before business hours are over. That's what I'll do. That's a very big priority of mine. And then I had this doctor who'd call me all the time to get me to come back and see him. And I didn't need to. He was a specialist, and whatever I'd gone to see him for, it was taken care of. You didn't need to see him again. But I didn't know how to tell him that. I didn't know how to tell him, I don't need you anymore. That felt really mean. And I didn't want to say that. And because it was all taken care of, and because I was feeling good about my health, suddenly returning his phone call didn't become a priority. It was no longer a priority, and it wasn't important anymore. But I didn't realize that. I felt like I was just avoiding it because I didn't want a confrontation, which is partly the truth. But I'm not going to have a confrontation with the receptionist. The receptionist at most doctors they know it's your health, it's your decision. But it was when I stepped back after a little while and I looked at what I was filling this time with every time the phone call. What was I doing? What else was I doing with my time? I realized I was taking good care of my health in other ways. I was still going to the dentist. I was still seeing my PCP for annual exams. I was still seeing my OBGYN for annual exams and all of that. It was fine. So, okay, maybe I'm not this horrible person that's just avoiding anything that's good for me. Maybe I need to step back and realize this is actually not that important anymore. Following up on this particular health issue is no longer important to me. And when I made that choice and I made that decision, it was a conscious shift in the way that I was thinking about it. Then the next time they called, you know what happened? I actually picked up the phone because I knew what to say, because I knew why I was avoiding them in the first place. And I was able to tell this receptionist very quickly, thank you, but I don't need another appointment. Guess what happened? The call lasted 2.5 seconds. She said, okay, thanks. Hung up the phone, never heard from them again. The point being, there are all these really legitimate reasons why we avoid what we avoid when it comes to our health. We're afraid of what could happen. We don't have the tools to cope with what could happen. We imagine the worst. We don't think it's important. The reasons are legitimate, but until you know the reasons, the avoidance is actually a maladaptive strategy. What that means is it doesn't work. Because when you avoid something without understanding why you're doing it, it creates stress in the body. Now, I know some of you that are listening going, well, maybe that's not so bad. Because avoidance is kind of like procrastination, right? And you might be thinking, well, I work best under pressure. I work best when I get my project done in the last 12 hours before the deadline. But guess what's happening that's allowing you to do that? Your stress response is on in your body. Your stress hormones are going, and it's impacting your immune system, your nervous system, and your endocrine system. And it's geared you up to get your project done in the last 12 hours. But avoidance, when it comes to your health, does the same thing. And what happens to your health, especially if you're trying to get pregnant, or you are pregnant, or you're trying to breastfeed, or you're trying to heal from a delivery, stress impairs all of that. It impairs all of that. Physically, it impairs all of it. We talked about it in a previous episode that I'm going to link in the show notes below with the details of exactly how that happens. Physiologically, chemically, avoidance gets in the way of exactly what you're trying to achieve, which is get pregnant, stay pregnant, or heal after delivery. That's aside from the fact that avoidance doesn't solve the problem and it allows problems to grow and escalate, right? You might have some health issue that could get worse if you don't deal with it. It also frustrates people around you because maybe your partner is going, oh my gosh, have you seen the doctor yet? You need to go see the doctor. You need to make that appointment. You need to get that prescription filled. You need to make this decision. If you're avoiding it, they might get frustrated with you, which adds stress to the relationship. I've totally been there. I've been there on both sides of it, actually. And then it just feels anxiety. So all of this to say, there are good reasons why we avoid. And if avoiding decisions, going to the doctor, the care that you receive, if it was easy to stop, you would have done it already. You wouldn't be listening to this. I wouldn't be talking about it. The problem is we often don't know why we avoid, so we can't stop the behavior. And when we're able to identify why we avoid things, it actually takes the emotional charge out of it. It becomes more of an investigation about how to solve a problem as opposed to this big giant situation that feels super overwhelming that you feel unprepared for. So what do you do about it? Well, it starts with what I just said. You've got to figure out why you're avoiding something. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, well, it's because I don't want something bad to happen. So I ask you to take it a step farther. What is the worst that could happen? A friend of mine taught me this great exercise that I use constantly because I am very good at coming up with terrible scenarios of things to expect. All the what ifs, all the negative worst case scenarios, I've nailed it. I'm such a pro at that. So she calls it the negative consequences exercise. Make a list, sit down and actually make a list of everything that could go wrong if you stopped avoiding. So if you made that phone call to your doctor, if you went to the appointment and got your blood work results, if you did that alternative optional ultrasound, if you went to see the genetics counselor, if you went to see your fertility specialist, if you went on bed rest and had to stop working for a week or two or a couple months or whatever, what are all the things that could happen that could go wrong? Name them all. No matter how crazy they sound, no matter how unreal they sound, no matter how you might be writing it and you'll go, that's never going to happen. And you know it's not realistic, write it anyway. And make a list as long as you can, because the benefit of doing that is it helps you to see that you're making the reality and the scenarios of the future worse than they actually are. Okay? So make a list of the worst, like what's the worst that can happen? I know when you're pregnant, the first thing that comes to mind is my baby could die. Yeah, absolutely. That could happen. But is going to the doctor going to make your baby die? No, it's not. It's just about, do you want to find out or not if your baby's okay? So what is the worst that can happen if you take that step? If you call your doctor, what's the worst that could happen? It's not something can happen to the baby. It's, I could find out something is wrong with the baby. But what else? What else? Make a list of everything. Make a list of everything. Then number 2, because if you're like me, you've got like pages of this. So number 2, do the exact same thing for positive scenarios. What's the best thing that could happen? What are all the good things that could come from going to see that genetics counselor, going to see that prenatal specialist, talking to a dietitian, changing your diet, refilling your prescription, doing the surgery? What are all the best things that could happen? Because here's the thing. We play the what if game, but we play it completely unfairly. If we're really talking about what ifs, if we're really thinking about the unknown means we don't know. That does not mean it is tinged with negative. Your history might say otherwise, and I get that. But that's a cognitive bias. That is a filter through which you are seeing your reality. The actual reality is if you don't know what's going to happen, it could be just as much positive as it could be negative. And I get that that's hard to believe, but that's the truth. And if you really want to help your health and you really want to stop avoiding the thing that you need to do, and you know what that thing is, you've got to play the what if game fairly. So you do a list of what's the worst that could happen if you stop avoiding and do the thing you need to do, right? Change your diet, stop drinking soda, go for a walk, call your doctor back. What's the worst that could happen? And then what's the best that could happen? And try to match the number. If you are like me, you probably have like 487 negative ones. So challenge accepted. 487 positive ones. Go for it. And write them down and notice what happens in your body when you do that. Because there will be a shift. You will notice that stress response dropping. And look, you haven't even done anything about the avoidance, right? But it will start dropping. You will start feeling differently in your body. Your breathing will improve. Your shoulders will relax. Your whole body is going to feel different. And that is the goal. If we can get you to a place of peace and calm, that's the only place from which you can make conscious decisions for your health. You can't make good decisions when you're anxious and overwhelmed and stressed and worried and afraid. Nobody can. So the goal is, let's calm you down. Make a list of negative consequences, all the bad things that could happen, and then an equally large list of all the good things that could happen if you stop avoiding the thing you need to do. Okay? And then step 3 is you do what I call Chandlering it up. If you're a Friends fan, which I am, there's a character on that show called Chandler. And when he was going to get married to Monica, one of the other characters on the show, he was freaking out. He was having cold feet. He was getting really nervous. He was getting super stressed out. And he didn't know if he could go through with it. And Monica's brother, Ross, helped him. And there's a scene where Ross goes, hey, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about the big thing. Just take a shower. Can you take a shower? I loved it. I love it because that's how we want to approach this. If you're avoiding something, it's because there's a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot of anxiety around it. There's a lot of something, right? There's an emotional charge that's making it hard to do. So let's make it easy. Don't call your doctor back. What's the next best thing? What are all the tiny little steps that you can take to get you to call your doctor back? For example, put it on your calendar. You don't have to call your doctor back today. Put it on your calendar for a time tomorrow. Next step, put an alarm on. Don't have to do the alarm right now. Do it later, right? But break that action up that you're avoiding, that thing you need to do, break it up into the tiniest little steps that you need to slowly get there. It works. It works every time. And it works because it gets you in action. The worst thing that you can do is to hide in that avoidance, fill your hands and your life and your brain with all these other things as a way to stuff away that thing that you're avoiding. It never works. It never, ever, ever works. You know that because you're listening here. It's not working right now. It's never going to work, right? And like I've said, you know you need to stop avoiding it, but you're not. I'm doing it right now. At this moment, at the time of this recording, I have a doctor's appointment that I need to make. It has nothing to do with fertility or pregnancy, but it's a doctor's appointment. It's one that I need every single year. Not doing it. They called me a week ago. To make that appointment, to remind me it's a yearly appointment, so I don't make it a year in advance. They usually call me because who knows what I'm doing a year from now, right? So instead of rescheduling, I just tell them to call me like 3 weeks or a month before I need the appointment. Call came. I have this reminder on my phone that I snooze every 3 hours because I don't want to make the call, make the appointment. So I'm doing, just this morning actually, I did what I just walked you through. I have to figure out why I'm avoiding it. And then I got to make all the worst case lists and then the best case list. And then I got to Chandler it up. Chandler it up, meaning tiny, tiny, tiny little steps to get me to call them back. And one of the steps that I actually put today was I reminded my husband to remind me to call them. It's a step though. It's a step and it works. It works for me because I know that when I don't do something for my health, it really affects him. And if I'm not going to do it for me, I'm going to do it for him so he doesn't get frustrated and upset with me. May not be the greatest reason, but hey, we're not aiming for perfection. You know that you need to stop avoiding for your sake. You need to be more invested in your health. Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you put it off. That's the reality. It'd be great if we all focused on our own health and just made it a super priority and we never missed appointments and we never missed phone calls and we totally took care of ourselves. Yeah, great. Doesn't work. It's not real. That's okay. That's okay. But when you figure out why you're avoiding something, then you figure out what's the worst thing that could happen and then what's the best thing that could happen. And you feel yourself calming down, not just emotionally, but physically, your body gets out of that stress cycle that's when you can see the path to doing the thing you need to do. And you do it one tiny step at a time. It's simple. It sounds simple because it is simple. But the only way to get yourself to do it is to figure out why you're not doing it in the first place, and then calming your body down so that you can take the first step. Avoiding the thing you need to do, it only hurts. And physically, it hurts your health because of that stress that it brings on. It doesn't help. It never helps. And you know that. But taking small proactive steps can beat that overwhelm. And that is how you'll stop avoiding and do the thing you need to do. It works. It works every time. I still use it. I still avoid. And then I still use this strategy and it works. I can say it personally and it works for all my clients and it will work for you too. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you liked today's episode, I would love it if you can head over to Apple Podcasts by iTunes and subscribe and leave a review so more women who are recovering from a delivery or who are pregnant right now or who are trying to get pregnant and are avoiding the thing that they need to do can tune in and they can listen in and receive inspiration and tips and hope and motivation and stories of encouragement on how to get through the really challenging time that they're going through to build their family. And also, if you're feeling a high level of stress during your pregnancy, Pregnancy Brain is the resource for you. So definitely check it out. You can get it on Amazon, on Kindle, or in paperback. It's all about the mind-body approach to stress management. It includes 70 years of research, tons of client stories, and a bit about my journey through a high-risk pregnancy too, to show you that you're not alone and to show you how much power you have in your body to help you through the ups and downs of a health crisis like a high-risk pregnancy. So check it out on Amazon. That is Pregnancy Brain. You can get it on Kindle or in paperback. And I would love to stay in touch. So come say hi. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Pinterest at Parijat Desh. That's Parijatdesh. Say hi. I love to hear from you. We all avoid. Avoiding the avoidance doesn't help, right? Let's accept the fact that we're avoiding. Acknowledge it. Recognize that that's what you're doing. Figure out why. And get your body to relax. Not your brain, your body. So that you can become really clear about what comes next. There's no judgment here. We all do it. You're doing it now. You're going to do it again. That's okay. Give yourself that permission to go through this process as many times as you need. It's the only way to take the steps that you need to give your health what it needs and what you need to get pregnant, stay pregnant, and heal after delivery. You deserve it, and you can do it. Take it one day, one step at a time. You really can do this.